I sat in that back room for 3 hours while Brother Matthews checked his phone. Brother Chin kept glancing at the clock, and Brother Williams, the man who baptized me when I was 12, wouldn't look me in the eye. They had notes in front of them. Every concern raised about me over the past 6 months. Every question I'd asked about 1914, about the overlapping generations, about why we shun family members. They didn't call me an apostate. That would have been cleaner. Instead, Brother Williams leaned forward and said something that made my blood run cold. We're going to strongly counsel the congregation about limiting association with those who spread doubts. Not disfellowshipped, not disassociated, just restricted, informally shunned. I didn't understand what that meant until I walked into the Kingdom Hall the following Thursday. Sarah, who I'd known since we were in the same baptism class, turned her back when I said hello. Brother Rodriguez, who'd given me rides to service for years, walked past like I was invisible. The entire congregation received a local needs talk about bad association without my name mentioned once. Everyone knew it was about me. This is how they destroy you when formal disfellowshipping would draw too much attention. This is how they make you disappear without announcing it from the platform. My name is Rachel, at least. That's what I'm calling myself here. I can't use my real name because my parents still speak to me, barely. And if they knew I was sharing this, that fragile thread would snap. I'm 33 years old, born and raised in the organization in Melbourne, Australia. Third-generation witness. My grandmother came into the truth in 1967, convinced Armageddon would arrive before 1975. My mother pioneered for 20 years. I was homeschooled to protect me from worldly association, never celebrated a birthday, never had a friend outside the organization. I knew the Watchtower publications better than I knew myself. This isn't just another XJW story. This is about something most people outside the organization don't know exists. A punishment that's not officially a punishment. A shunning that's not officially shunning. A way to destroy someone's entire life without ever announcing it from the platform. Before I go further, I need to know I'm not alone in this. If you're reading this and you've experienced informal shunning or restrictions, or if you're still in and you've watched this happen to someone, or if you're just trying to understand what your XJW friend went through, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're from. Tell me your story, because the Watchtower Society thrives on our silence, and I'm done being silent. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to hear what really happens behind closed Kingdom Hall doors. This isn't just my story. It might be yours too. Where are you watching from? Are you still in? Recently out? Or trying to understand someone you love who escaped? Drop a comment. I read every single one. I should have known I was in trouble when I asked Brother Matthews about the Australian Royal Commission. We were in field service, sitting in his Toyota Camry outside a house where no one answered, filling out our territory cards. It was March 2020, just before COVID changed everything, and I'd stumbled across a news article the night before about the Commission's findings. The Royal Commission had concluded years earlier, 2015 to 2017, but I'd never heard about it. Not once. Not from the platform. Not from other witnesses. Not anywhere. And there was Jeffrey Jackson, a governing body member, giving testimony that made me uncomfortable. Things about the two-witness rule. Things about whether the governing body claimed to be God's only spokesperson. Brother Matthews, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Did you hear about the Royal Commission findings? About the child abuse inquiries? His hand stopped moving on the territory card. Where did you hear about that? Online. A news article. I should have lied. I should have said another witness told me. But I was still naive enough to think honesty mattered. Sister Rachel. He turned to face me fully, and his expression had shifted from friendly to guarded. You need to be very careful about what you're reading on the internet. Satan controls the media. They twist everything to make Jehovah's organization look bad. But it was from the Commission's actual findings. They investigated Australia specifically and found, did you watch apostate material? His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. like I confessed to murder. No, it was just the news coverage, the government's official report. My chest tightened. I was defending myself, and I didn't know why. I just asked a question. Brother Matthews put down his pen. I'm going to give you some counsel, sister, and I need you to receive it in the spirit it's intended. We're living in the last days. Satan is working overtime to stumble Jehovah's people. He'll use anything, news reports, court cases, even official-looking government inquiries, to plant seeds of doubt. The governing body doesn't owe us explanations for every legal proceeding. We trust in Jehovah's organization. I'm not doubting. I just wanted to understand. That's how it starts. He started the car, ending our conversation. First you want to understand, then you think you need to research, then you're watching apostate videos and questioning everything. I've seen it happen. Be careful, Sister Rachel. We drove back to the Kingdom Hall in silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation. The way Brother Matthew's face had changed, the warning in his voice. I'd been a witness my entire life. I'd knocked on thousands of doors. I'd studied with people and brought them to meetings. I'd given up university scholarship because the elders said higher education showed lack of faith in the nearness of Armageddon. And I couldn't ask a question about a public inquiry. I opened my laptop. My hands shook as I typed Royal Commission Jehovah's Witnesses, Australia, into the search bar. I told myself I was just verifying the news article, making sure I hadn't misunderstood. The findings were devastating. Over 1,800 alleged perpetrators in Australia alone, documented in congregation files. Not one, not a single one, had been reported to police by the organization. The two-witness rule meant that unless another person witnessed the abuse, the accused faced no consequences. Often, the victim was disciplined for slander. I found clips of Jeffrey Jackson's testimony. He was careful, evasive even, but the implications were clear. When pressed about whether the governing body was God's sole channel of communication, he said it would seem to be quite presumptuous to say they were the only spokesperson God was using. When asked about the two-witness rule in cases of child abuse, he acknowledged problems, but defended the policy as scriptural. I watched testimonies from elders, heard them describe procedures I recognized. The same judicial process, the same insistence on two witnesses, the same outcomes I'd heard whispered about when I was 16, and Sister Hamilton's daughter tried to report her stepfather. By sunrise, I had more questions than I'd ever had in my life, and I was stupid enough to think I could ask them. The elders called me in 8 weeks after my conversation with Brother Matthews. 8 weeks of me asking careful questions to my friends. Did you know about the Royal Commission? What do you think about the overlapping generations doctrine? Have you checked if the 607 BCE date is historically accurate? And 8 weeks of people starting to avoid me at meetings. The phone call came from Brother Williams on a Tuesday evening. Sister Rachel, the body of elders would like to meet with you. This Thursday at 7 if possible. We have some concerns we'd like to discuss. My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? We'll discuss everything when we meet. Can you make it Thursday? I wanted to say no. I wanted to ask what I was being accused of. But you don't refuse the elders. Yes, I'll be there. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I researched what happens in judicial committees, something I'd never needed to know before. I learned about the elders' manual, Shepherd the Flock of God, that outlined procedures for every imaginable situation. I learned that committees were supposed to be confidential, but rarely were. I learned that once you're called into that back room, you're already guilty in their eyes. Thursday came. I arrived at the Kingdom Hall at exactly 7, wearing a modest dress, my hair neat, my Bible and notebook in hand, like I was going to a regular meeting. The congregation was having the midweek meeting in the main hall. I could hear Brother Garcia giving his talk as I walked past to the back room. Brother Williams, Brother Matthews, and Brother Chen were already seated, 3 chairs arranged in a line, facing a single chair for me. Like an interrogation, They smiled when I entered, but their eyes didn't. Sister Rachel, thank you for coming. Brother Williams gestured to the empty chair. We wanted to talk with you about some concerns that have been brought to our attention. I sat down, hands folded in my lap. What concerns? Brother Matthews had a notepad. Several in the congregation have mentioned that you've been asking questions. Troubling questions about the organization, about the governing body, about our understanding of Scripture. Is that accurate? I've asked some questions, yes. I've been studying. What have you been studying? Brother Chin leaned forward. He was the youngest of the three, only 40, with wire-rimmed glasses that made him look perpetually suspicious. The Bible mostly, and I looked into the Royal Commission findings. I wanted to understand. You sought out this information deliberately. Brother Matthews made a note. It's public record. It's not apostate material. It's an official government inquiry. But you sought it out after we counseled you not to pursue this matter. Brother Matthews again, writing. The meeting lasted 3 hours. They asked me about every question I'd raised, every conversation I'd had, every doubt I'd expressed. They asked if I believed the governing body was God's faithful and discreet slave. I hesitated, just for a second, and they all saw it. They asked if I believed 1914 was the year Jesus became king. I said I was trying to understand how we arrived at that date, when secular history doesn't support 607 BCE. They asked if I believed only Jehovah's Witnesses would survive Armageddon. I said Jesus indicated many would come from all nations. Wrong answer. Wrong answers to all of it. But here's what happened next. They didn't disfellowship me. Brother Williams closed his notepad and said, Sister Rachel, we can see you're being influenced by information that's causing you to doubt Jehovah's organization. We're not going to take formal judicial action tonight because you haven't been promoting these ideas publicly or trying to form a sect. However, we have a responsibility to protect the congregation. We'll be removing your commenting privileges at meetings, and we're going to give a strong local needs talk about the dangers of questioning the faithful and discreet slave. What does that mean for me? My voice sounded far away. It means, Brother Chin said, that spiritually minded ones in the congregation will naturally limit their association with you until you demonstrate you're no longer a spiritual danger. We can't force anyone to avoid you. You're not disfellowshipped, but we have a duty to warn them. So you're going to make everyone shun me without officially shunning me. We prefer to call it protecting the flock. You can still attend meetings. You're not announced as disfellowshipped, but until you show genuine repentance, until you stop asking these questions and accept direction from Jehovah's organization, most mature Christians will choose to limit contact with you. It's their decision, of course. But it wasn't. They'd make that decision for everyone with one talk. The local needs talk was delivered the following Tuesday. I sat in my usual seat, 3 rows from the front, left side. Sarah sat next to me like always. We've been friends for 18 years, since we were both 12 and studied for baptism together. She'd held my hand in the pool when we went under the water. She'd cried with me when my grandmother died. She was the closest thing I had to a sister. Brother Williams gave the talk. 20 minutes on guarding against bad association and protecting the congregation from poisonous thinking. He never said my name. He didn't have to. He quoted 2 John 10-11 about not greeting anyone who didn't bring the true teaching. He referenced Paul's instruction to stop keeping company with anyone who claimed to be a brother but was causing divisions. Sometimes, he said, looking directly at the section where I sat, someone we know starts questioning the faithful and discreet slave. They claim they're just seeking truth, but really, they're allowing Satan to use them to stumble others. What's the loving thing to do? Jehovah's word is clear. We must be cautious. We must protect ourselves and our families, not because we don't love them, but because we love Jehovah's organization more. After the meeting, Sarah stood up and walked away without a word. I called her name. She kept walking. Brother Garcia, who'd given me rides to the Kingdom Hall every Sunday for 3 years, drove past me in the parking lot. I waved. He looked straight ahead. Sister Kim, who I'd studied the Bible with, who'd made me soup when I had the flu last winter, turned her back when I approached. "I can't talk to you right now, Rachel," she whispered. "I'm sorry." Within a week, my entire social structure collapsed. Every friend I had was a witness. Every social event was congregation-related. Every meaningful relationship in my life was connected to the Kingdom Hall. And suddenly, all of it was gone. The worst part, they were still technically allowed to talk to me. I wasn't disfellowshipped. If someone felt like being merciful, they could say hello. They could include me in field service groups. They could sit next to me at meetings. But the elders' talk had made it clear. Associating with me was spiritually dangerous, and no one wanted to risk being restricted themselves. I kept going to meetings for another month. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Hope that someone would show mercy. Fear of what leaving completely would mean. Every Tuesday and Sunday, I'd sit in that Kingdom Hall surrounded by people I'd known my entire life, and no one would speak to me. During the songs, I'd hear voices all around me singing about love and brotherhood. During the prayers, I'd stand with my head bowed, invisible. After meetings, I'd watch families gather in the parking lot, making plans for lunch, organizing service groups, laughing together. I'd walk to my car alone, drive home alone, sit in my apartment alone. My mother called once during this time. Just once. "Rachel, the elders told us what's happening. Your father and I are very disappointed. We're not going to cut you off completely because you're not disfellowshipped, but we can't have our normal relationship until you fix this. We need to protect our own spirituality." "Mom, I just ask questions. That's all. Questions about things that are in public records." "That's the problem. You're trusting worldly sources over Jehovah's organization. We'll be praying for you." She hung up. I stopped going to meetings after that. What was the point? I was already experiencing full shunning without the official label. At least if I stayed home, I would have to feel invisible while surrounded by people. The silence was deafening. No phone calls. No text messages. No invitations. No one checking if I was okay. I'd had COVID-19 earlier that year, and half the congregation brought me meals and sent cards. Now nothing. I could have been dead in my apartment, and no one would have noticed until the rent went unpaid. I got a cat, named her Ruth, after the woman in the Bible who refused to leave Naomi. At least Ruth was loyal. For months after the restrictions, I got one text message. From Sarah. It said, "I miss you, but I can't talk to you. I'm sorry. Please come back." I stared at that message for an hour. Please come back. Back to what? Back to pretending I didn't have questions. Back to ignoring documented abuse cases. Back to believing that 8 men in New York had a direct line to God that no one else could question. Back to conditional love that evaporated the moment I asked why. I deleted the message. Then I cried for 2 days straight. With no social life and nothing but time, I did what the elders feared most. I researched. Really researched. Not just critical websites, though I found those too, and learned that apostate was a label used to dismiss anyone who left, regardless of their reasons. I read academic papers, historical documents, court transcripts, the Watchtower's own publications from decades past that contradicted current teachings. I learned that 1914 wasn't based on solid chronology. The 607 BC date for Jerusalem's destruction, the foundation of the entire 1914 calculation, wasn't supported by archaeological or historical evidence. Every scholar, every archaeological find, every astronomical calculation pointed to 586/587 BCE, 20 years off, which meant 1914 was wrong, which meant 1919 was wrong, which meant the whole idea that Jesus chose the Watchtower organization in 1919 as a sole channel was built on quicksand. I learned about the overlapping generations doctrine, how it had changed multiple times because the original understanding was that the generation that saw 1914 wouldn't pass away before Armageddon. But they all died. Every single one. So the doctrine evolved. And evolved again. Now a generation could overlap with another generation, stretching Jesus' words to cover more than a century. It was theological gymnastics designed to avoid admitting the original prophecy failed. I learned about the actual extent of the child abuse problem. The Royal Commission in Australia documented over 1,800 alleged perpetrators in files kept by the organization. Not one reported to authorities. Testimony revealed the two-witness rule protected abusers systematically. Similar investigations in other countries found the same patterns. Internal documents leaked online suggested the problem was far larger globally than officially acknowledged, though exact numbers were disputed. I learned about blood policy changes, how witnesses couldn't accept whole blood but could accept fractions that came from donated blood that witnesses were forbidden to donate, how the policy had changed repeatedly, how children and adults had died refusing treatments that were later deemed acceptable, how the Watchtower never apologized to families who'd lost loved ones following policies that were later modified. I learned about Mexico and Malawi. In the 1960s and 70s, witnesses in Malawi were tortured, raped, and killed because the organization forbade them from buying a political party card that meant nothing. Meanwhile, witnesses in Mexico were allowed to bribe officials for military service cards. Same organization, same era, opposite policies. The Malawi witnesses suffered horrifically because of decisions made in Brooklyn. Every night, I'd close my laptop feeling sicker, angrier, more betrayed. This was the organization I'd given everything to. The organization I'd been taught was the only source of truth in a Satan-controlled world, and they'd misled me. About chronology, about doctrine, about how abuse was handled, about deaths that could have been prevented with different policies. They changed teachings without apology, erased old publications from their website, acted like previous understandings never existed. I joined an XJW support group online. Hundreds of people sharing stories just like mine. People restricted, people disfellowshipped, people who'd simply walked away and lost everyone. A woman whose mother wouldn't attend her wedding because she'd married outside the organization. A man whose father died, refusing blood. And a treatment was available that was later deemed acceptable. But the information hadn't reached their congregation in time. A teenager thrown out at 17 for being gay, now living in a shelter, still believing he deserved it because that's what he'd been taught. I wasn't alone. There were thousands of us, maybe hundreds of thousands worldwide, all informally shunned or formally disfellowshipped or quietly faded, all trying to rebuild lives that had been completely structured by an organization that claimed to speak for God. One night, I found a video by a man who'd been an elder for 20 years. He'd served at Bethel headquarters. He explained, methodically and with documentation, how doctrine changes happened, not through divine revelation, but through committee meetings and votes. How the governing body knew their chronology was problematic, but couldn't admit it, because their entire authority structure depended on 1914 and 1919. How policies that harm people were maintained to avoid legal liability. I watched until 3 in the morning. When it ended, I sat in the dark and realized I'd sacrificed 30 years. My education, my relationships, my career opportunities, all given to an organization that functioned like every other high-control group, just with better PR. I made a decision. I was done. Not faded. Not inactive. I was going to formally disassociate. Disassociation in Jehovah's Witnesses is treated exactly like disfellowshipping. Once you formally leave, you're completely shunned. Your family can't speak to you. Lifelong friends must treat you as dead. Even a simple greeting is forbidden. It's the nuclear option. But I was already being treated like I was disfellowshipped. The only difference was that thin thread connecting me to my parents, and the theoretical possibility of coming back if I just submitted and stopped asking questions. I didn't want that possibility anymore. I wanted out. Officially. Completely. Forever. I wrote my disassociation letter on a Tuesday morning in early 2021. Kept it simple. To the body of elders at the South Melbourne congregation, I am formally disassociating myself from the congregation and the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. This decision is final. Do not contact me or visit me. I do not wish to discuss this decision. Please respect my choice. Rachel. I printed 3 copies, put them in envelopes, addressed them to the Kingdom Hall. My hand shook as I dropped them in the postbox. The metallic clang felt like the end of the world. In a way, it was. It was the end of the only world I'd ever known. The announcement came the following Sunday. I didn't attend, but my mother called immediately after. She was crying. Rachel, they announced you disassociated. Why? Why would you do this to us? Mom, they were already treating me like I was disfellowshipped. This just makes it official. Everything has changed. Now I can't talk to you at all. Your father won't even say your name. How could you be so selfish? Selfish? I asked questions about documented abuse cases and got shunned for it. How is that selfish? You're listening to apostates. You've let Satan. No, Mom. I read court documents, government inquiries, the organization's own old publications. They've changed doctrines over and over without admitting they were wrong before. I can't listen to this. You're my daughter. I love you, but I love Jehovah more. Until you come back to the truth, I can't have a relationship with you. I'm sorry. She hung up. That was the last time I spoke to my mother. That was nearly 5 years ago now. My father never called. Neither did my aunts or uncles or cousins. All witnesses. All gone. Sarah didn't reach out. No one from the congregation did. The announcement was made, and I ceased to exist in their world. The first few months were brutal. I'd wake up and for a split second forget, then remember and feel the weight of it all over again. Everyone I loved had chosen an organization over me. They'd chosen 8 men in New York they'd never met over their own daughter, their own friend, their own family member. I went to therapy. My therapist specialized in religious trauma and high control groups. She was careful with terminology, but made clear that what I'd experienced fit patterns of undue influence and thought reform. Hearing someone validate the help more than I expected, I started rebuilding, made friends, real friends who didn't require me to believe exactly what they believed, who didn't abandon me for asking questions, who loved me without conditions attached to organizational loyalty. I went back to school, started the degree I'd given up at 18, made the dean's list first semester, cried when I saw my grades because I'd been told my whole life that higher education was spiritually dangerous and would destroy my faith. Turns out, education just helped me think critically about what I'd been taught. I celebrated my first birthday, 32 years old, and I'd never blown out candles on a cake. My new friends threw me a surprise party. I ugly cried the entire time. They probably thought I was unhinged, but they hugged me anyway. I'm not going to tell you it's all better now. It's not. I still have nightmares about that back room. I still tense up when I see Kingdom Halls. I still feel grief when I think about my mother. Religious trauma doesn't vanish because you're physically free. But I am free. I can think my own thoughts, ask my own questions, make my own choices, love who I want to love, build the life I want to build. No one controls my information, my relationships, my future except me. The elders thought restricting me would break me. They thought informal shunning, while keeping me technically in, would be worse than formal disfellowshipping. They were right. It was worse. But it also pushed me to do what I might never have done otherwise. It pushed me to research, to question, to leave. They didn't formally expel me. They did something worse. And inadvertently, they freed me. If you're still in and starting to question, know this. The fear you're feeling is intentional. They taught you that doubt is Satan's voice, that questions are spiritual weakness, that leaving means losing everything. And they're right about that last part. You will lose everything connected to the organization. But here's what they don't tell you. What you lose was never unconditional love anyway. Real love doesn't evaporate when you ask questions. Real love doesn't require perfect doctrinal alignment. Real love doesn't hold your family hostage to keep you compliant. The organization calls it loyalty to Jehovah, but it's organizational control with a scriptural veneer. If you've been restricted, shunned, or disfellowshipped and you're struggling, I see you. I know the isolation is crushing. I know you're questioning whether you made the right choice. I know some days you want to go back just to stop the pain. But please hold on. It gets better. Not immediately. Not easily. But it does get better. There's a world out here full of people who will love you for who you are, not who an organization requires you to be. And if you've never been a witness, but you're trying to understand what your ex-JW friend or family member is going through, thank you for caring enough to listen. Just being here means more than you know. We left a high-control group that taught us everyone outside was deceived. Learning to trust people again takes time. Be patient with us. We're learning how to navigate life outside a controlled environment. The elders didn't disfellowship me. They did something worse. They showed me that the love I'd been promised my entire life was conditional on organizational compliance. And once I understood that, I couldn't stay. I'm Rachel. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I'm restricted, disassociated, and free. And I'm never going back.